welcome to the Integrate This podcast. I'm Jeremy Mikla, and I'm joined as always by David Berner. And we're really excited to bring with a special guest on our show again today. Her name is Amanda Otero. Amanda is a digital resource teacher in Minnesota. I'll let her I know it's a combination of several different city names. I don't want to miss one, so I won't say exactly what they all are. But she's also one of the leaders of a group that formed about a year and a half ago in Minnesota called the Minnesota Generative AI Alliance. And Amanda is one of the leads that is part of that group as well. And so let's just kind of kick it off here, Amanda. Why don't you tell us a little bit kind of your background, your origin story, as it were, when it comes to getting to where you are in this world of education technology?
Yeah, don't we all have an interesting story to get there? Well, thank you very much for having me on. And it's really great that this is a podcast that exists for this exact kind of thing and for us to discuss all these kinds of important issues. So, well, I'm Amanda Otero, and I have always wanted to be a teacher. I think it's just what I knew what I wanted to do, so I was ready to do it. And the ed tech piece really kind of came in as I was searching for but how do I do the best things for my students? Because what was there was just wasn't feeling like enough. So I'd say my foundation's really built in the Michael Fullan quote of pedagogy is the driver and technology is the accelerator. So my background is in elementary education. I taught second, fourth, fifth, and sixth in urban charter and suburban school districts. I really took my first steps into ed tech because in the classroom I was trying to investigate how to bring the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking into the space for my students. And so we were doing things like setting up classroom committees or genius hour and those kinds of things. And so I started to get ready to go into a master's program, and I did a lot of research because I was really thinking I read a lot, I do a lot of things, and I didn't want to end up in a program where I just felt like I wasn't really going to learn or gain something. So I spent a lot of time investigating, and I decided on the Learning Design and Technology program at St. Mary's University in Minnesota. And this was a really great experience because it did both confirm and enhance the purpose and place of technology in education. And really because it was based on that learning design element, that it was about student and human-centered design. And I've continued on since then. I have my ed specialist and a K-12 principal license from Concordia St. Paul. And so professionally, I moved out of the classroom about 3 years ago. This is my third year out of the classroom. And I'm in this digital resource TOSA role in Independent District School District 196, Rosemont, Apple Valley, Egan. So we're like the third largest school district in the state. So yeah, we have a lot going on. We just opened our 20th elementary school, and so yeah, there's a team of 3 of us who are supporting elementary buildings, and we each have 7 of the 20 elementary schools, but also collaborate on some administrative and resource gathering tasks for the district too. Um, and so as part of this other work that I do as part of my role, I was dabbling with some AI things and was asked to be a part of our district AI guidance committee. And one of the first steps that our district AI guidance committee took was that we were invited to the first Mangaya summit, but kind of before Mangaya was Mangaya. So I went, and it was like the perfect culmination of like my experience and where our goals were at and the things I thought and felt. And so there was an invitation at the end if you wanted to join and learn more. And I took it, and I've taken just every opportunity and invitation since then to continue collaborating with this fantastic alliance of people. And now Mangaya is actively forming a nonprofit to really enhance this cross-sector collaboration with this human-centered focus, so that we can help support and align all the things. Like, we don't want to be in competition with all the other great work happening across Minnesota, but really to support and align and create more collaboration between all the great work like that your 2 organizations also are doing across Minnesota. And so this core group had, because we're forming a nonprofit, we were given titles, and we're all FCOs, so it's Fierce Collaboration Officers. So that's a really fun title that aptly sums up like who we are and where we're trying to go with things.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like you kind of just like beginning when you were in the classroom and you were always kind of on the edge of the innovation and pushing that forward, that you just continue to do that in the role that you have today. And just really thankful for the things that you do for not just the students and the staff of the schools that you are part of ISD 196, but also like to greater and rest of the parts of Minnesota as well. And that's where I kind of like, especially when we talk about go to that innovation point. Artificial intelligence, of course, is the innovation that really most people in education technology are coming back to over and over again. And I had the opportunity to attend a session that you presented at a conference not too long ago, that you called Dueling AIs,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was just this really clever play on artificial intelligence, along with kind of like when I talk to teachers is always the elephant in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to do with cheating. And so your other AI is, maybe I'll let you fill that in, not to steal all of your your thunder here, but like, how did you come up with this concept of this dueling AIs? What does that mean? And like, where did that kind of come from?
Okay. So the title of the session is Dueling AIs, Academic Integrity and Artificial Intelligence. And the basis of it really came because I wanted to enter in this conversation with others because I felt this tension. Like I felt this tension happening in our AI guidance committee. And I wanted to create a space and a place for this conversation to keep happening. Not that I don't feel like I have answers. I don't know that like we're going to go to a session and come out with answers, but just being able to name it, I think is the opportunities that we need to take so that we're moving in that direction and starting to think about what is possible with AI and artificial intelligence. So the title really kind of comes from the idea of like both can exist together, because some of the tension feels like you can have one or the other, but you can't have both.
Right. So
And
it's not like two people with guns pacing out the opposite way and they turn and they fire at each other, right? But
right,
it's just like, because maybe that's just a little bit of a misconception, but really the possibilities of the two working together.
right, right. Like, is that possible? Um, and so I think like in our own AI guidance committee, we were having this conversation. We entered into like our AI guidance work and quickly as a team collaborated on our overall guidance, like really quickly and easily. And as we started to come to those, like, so what's the next step? And then it was like, well, we need to look at some pieces for how AI is being used because it's already being used and we need to do something more to address that. So in our guidance, we named academic integrity. We outlined that as a core element, and we named it as we foster human intelligence and creativity while preparing students to flourish in an AI integrated world. Maintaining high standards, we use AI as a supplement to, not a substitute for, our own intellectual effort, never replacing human judgment. And so I think like we were all like, yeah, that's a great definition. That's exactly what we mean. And as we worked into this work for coming up with the usage guidelines, it just quickly felt like that piece of it didn't feel like it was being maintained in how we wanted to use AI. We wanted to use it in the conversation really kind of started with the stoplight model, like yes, kind of sort of maybe caution or no. And it was like all in or all out kind of a thing. And there were just concerns like if this is what we mean by academic integrity though, and then we create this usage model that kind of gives an out to say then I'm just going to not use AI. Are we living up to that sense of what we are we fulfilling our goal of what we mean by academic integrity if we're just like kind of cutting it out. So we took a closer look at other examples and we used a lot from different groups and organization. I think the one we went through was from like Washington Public, like the Department of Public Education or something like that. And it has a spectrum model. So it goes through 0 through 5 levels. And of those levels, it has a 0, I'm not going to use AI, and all the way up to 5 viewing AI as a co-creator. And really the conversation of the tension came not because of the spectrum piece of it. Everyone kind of like was on board with that, but it was in the color coding. So I know you guys, and I listened to your podcast, you had Leon Ferez on, and this is like part of what he's talked about too, is like the colors have meant a whole lot in what
Yeah.
we mean about AI guidance. So it's really interesting. So I had been working on making some of the graphics for it. So I had originally like made the spectrum colors like our district colors. So it's a red and yellow and a blue. And so it kind of went from red to blue at the level 5. And it was like, we were not going to go in that direction. We needed to change it so that it was like red, yellow, green, and more mimicked the stoplight. And I was like, okay, so that then this is like kind of the tension, right? And so we went back and forth a lot on this, and we ended up saying like maybe this is an appropriate starting place to have it be a little more stoplight because it is a maybe an easier entry point. But I just think there's still more to do, and I'm just really interested in like Leon Ferz's work with like changing the model to a circle and changing the color scheme
Mm.
completely away from that. And I think it seems like things that could be trivial, but in practice they're not, because it's tied to this deeper sense of like what we allow or don't allow when we use something with certain colors that mean like yes, no, and maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, and one of the things I liked about what he kind of put forth is that one of the things that stuck with me from that interview was how he said there's a lot of play for teachers within that scale, like because the way that they're going to apply it, dependent upon like grade level or content area, that might shift based on the different levels that they're going to be applying. So, and so I wanted to kind of get your opinion too on it's really important, obviously, to have the established frameworks as reference for the district. And you said that there's some tension there in kind of figuring that piece out. But could you also touch a little bit too on the reframing that happens with just how teachers respond to that? We have districts that don't have any framework in place. We have some like your own that you've started that work and you've kind of established like this is where we want to go with this. This is what this should look like. What about teacher mindset and adopting some of those things? How
Hmm.
maybe how have you seen educators at your own school respond to that? But is there also some things that you think are required to help shift teachers' mindset in that because of all the AI is cheating conversations and different things like that that cause people to stop and say, I'm not going to use it at all, or I'm very hesitant. So could you touch on that a little bit, just maybe the teacher mindset and the shifts that you're seeing there?
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot you could unpack with that piece of it. I think when we think about teacher mindsets, I think it's broader than AI, right? I think I the vast majority of teachers and educators are always doing the best they can, and with the best intent, and like when they know better, they do better. And it's getting to that space where you're open and willing to know better, so that, and having the time and ability to do better with it. Because like there's it becomes more actionable when you advise teachers how to navigate between this bus trust and verification piece of things. So I'm hopeful that like asking these kinds of questions and creating these base models things is just getting the conversation going, is part of the beginning of how to break down the teacher mindsets about things. Just reframing questions in a way that helps you look at not just the academic integrity, but maybe like the learner integrity or the learning integrity. Like how are we, so we want to make sure that they're preserving the academics, but what are we also doing to preserve the learner, and making sure they have voice and process and agency represented in what they're doing. And I think that's a shift away from a lot of the traditional model of things. So it's going to take time to just really ask questions and be in that space and work through it. In our district, I think we see like really the same as everyone else is seeing. We see, like the hard resistors, the early onset, people who are willing to dabble and try. I think we like there's a lot of research that shows like 60 to 80% of teachers and students really feel pretty similarly about the use of AI in academics. And it's that they feel a little hesitant, and in part because they're not sure if they're going to end up crossing a line or a boundary. Like, where is the boundary of where this goes into academic integrity or a cheating kind of model? And so like one of the things we pose in the session too is like, well, what if we take out AI and we say like, what if there's a tutor or a parent or a peer supporting that student? Where would you also draw the line that this has become an academic integrity issue if you're getting those kinds of support that have been traditionally encouraged for students? So it's like this working through it, because I think there's a lot of concern that nobody wants to like break the rules or be the first person to go out and do something that ends up being wrong. And so how do we get in this space where we can experiment and try with it and not feel like we're doing harm?
Like I recall, like to the point of what you're saying here, if you replace AI with something else, drop in parent. I can't tell you how many times when my kids were still in high school and they had papers or projects that they were working on, and they would come to me to help edit the grammar, the sentence structure of their papers, and I would give them suggestions, on what they could do to make a stronger argument, or to fix the grammar in such a way as to make it sound, more scholarly maybe, or whatever the word happened to be. And that's not a whole lot different than one of the ways that you could be effectively using AI to do some of that in place of, the best human available to you is not available at the time. Is AI a good alternative for that? And then is that cheating then when my kids would come to me and ask for help? And is it cheating if they go to AI and ask for help?
Right. Because then that goes to like 1984, Bloom suggested that there was this 2 sigma problem that could be solved, that if every teacher had an aide and every student had a tutor, that you would see this like 2 sigma growth in it. And like there's a lot of debate saying like, well, so if AI could be that tutor and that teacher aide, are we at this point that we could turn and make all this growth? And it's like yes and no, because it's still within this system that has some like really strong constraints in it. And I think it's also this review of like, and what part of the systems our educational systems are really working and high functioning, and what parts maybe do we need to review and redesign. And it makes an interesting like case and argument for that. So when you think about this idea of parents doing that too, like my background's elementary, and when I first was in the classroom, so I was in the classroom for like 15 years. And when I was first in the classroom, we used to do science fairs and big projects like that. And over time, we stopped doing those, and we stopped doing them because it became a haves and have not conversation, because there were the parents who did the project for the students and bought most of the materials, and right, like it was just a totally different world than a kid who put together their own resources and made it happen. And it just didn't feel equitable anymore to put on those kinds of events, and then we just took it away and then it was gone. And so I think I also, when I enter this conversation, I bring this perspective of what things I've seen happen in elementary, and changes in pieces that how things function there, and then see how it really accentuates into high school. So at the session that I was at with Jeremy, I asked a question about like, do we just need to make our assignments more engaging? Like, is it an engagement issue? And this teacher right away was like, it's not it. It's not engagement. And she went into explaining that as a secondary teacher, she has spent a lot of time really redesigning her assignments to be engaging for her students. And she was like an ELA teacher, and she had purposely redesigned this project to have students like summarize or create a video in a form, like a short form video format, like a TikTok, Instagram kind of thing. And she wasn't even asking them to record it, just to create like the outline and the script and the content of what they would put in the video. And she said she had 64 students and she had 4 complete the assignment. 4. The rest of them just would not engage in the work. And she said, then she even went as far to say, hey, if you actually record it, I will actually give you bonus points. You can get extra credit for actually recording it. And she had 1 student take on actually recording it. And when you talk to her and you thought about, like, even the way she was explaining the assignment, she wasn't even frustrated about that. She was excited still to describe this assignment because she felt like it was a really engaging opportunity for them, but she couldn't get them to engage in it. And so I wonder if some of that comes from the educational structure that's in place, where, like, as an elementary teacher, I look and I see kindergartners come in and bright and enthusiastic and eager to learn and curious. And I taught 4th and 5th grade a lot in my career, and I watched them leave with mindsets already set if they are a good learner or not good learner, if they're good at school or not good at school, and how engaged they already want to be with the content and how checked out they can already be by the end of elementary school, and how often it is that, like, elementary needs to be much more explicit. We need to, like, be laying a strong foundation. But when a student comes with an authentic curiosity, how often is it that they get, like, tampered down and told, like, not right now, not in this time and space, and their day is so structured that, like, then when does that time and space come? When do they get to explore and be curious in those kinds of ways? So I I wonder how much this idea of engagement also plays across it. 'Cause, one of my initial thoughts was like, well, then it's an engagement thing, but there's more to it, because what are we doing that we're disengaging students so much, even by 4th or 5th grade, that they're going into secondary just already said that they're kind of done with it. And so for that, I've been reading The Disengaged Teen by Jenny Anderson and Rebecca Winthrop, and they describe 4 modes of learners, and it's resistors, passengers, achievers, and explorers. And it like just really was tying together some thoughts I had about elementary and this experience the secondary teacher had taught, and then my own son when I was reading this book, because I think so we know resistors, like every teacher's had resistors who
Mhm.
just actively work against, and they get a lot of the attention. And then we know achievers because they also get like the other end of the attention because they're high flyers and they seem to be doing just right. And they make an argument that achievers might also be on the brink of some mental health situations because they're putting themselves up, that the academics are kind of like giving them their self-worth and value. And if anything in that tower crumbles, they they might crumble too. And we've seen that happen with high achievers, or it's one of those things where, like, they say that A students will work for the B students when they like when you think of like the real world, it's the A students who work for the B students. Um, and then there's the passengers, and I think I've always been really intrigued by the passengers, or these kids that are just kind of like along for the ride and kind of do like the minimum to get by. And like, what again are we doing that we create this passenger system and we're not engaging you, not just in the task of assignment, but in wanting to learn? Because I feel like it's one of the most human elements we have, that we are curious and want to know about the world around us. But somehow we create this system where we end up with a mass of students who don't want to. They just see it as this, like, I'm just going to take the passenger ride and do the minimum to get by.
Do you think some of that is due to, or maybe a large extent is due to the way that our system is set up? Once kids get to that upper middle school and into high school, it becomes more about playing the game of school to get a grade, or you've realized that I've already lost the game of school. And while I might have very engaging teachers with amazing lessons and that could really amp up what they're doing, they already realize that either I'm going to win the game of school or I'm going to lose the game of school. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And the curiosity is just gone for either group.
right. Right. I mean, I do feel like that's part of it. And I see that in my own son. So I think that's like, I'm reading this book, I'm seeing this in my own child. I think because we're exploring like what is cheating and why do cheaters want to cheat kind of thing. And it's like, well, first the research shows there's not really a change, at least some of the initial research has showed there's not really a change in the amount of cheating that's happening. There's the Stanford studies kind of show that there's the same amount of cheating happening. If you want to cheat, you're going to cheat. And it's like, well, and who's doing that? And I think in elementary, we often ask the question or say things like that behavior is always a sign of communication. And like, what are kids telling us when they make that choice though? When they want to take the shortcut to their own learning, what are they really telling us? And I get like, so I saw this with my own son. So he's 20 now. He was, a sophomore in high school during the pandemic, and he had been, maybe on the border of passenger achiever, like, and there are others, explorer, who's a kid who's just kind of like self-motivated, and it's not just for the like carrots and nuggets of grades along the way, but just actively engaged in their learning kind of thing. And sometimes he could like go into that space too, and he does in other ways, like extracurricular type things. But school wise, he was highly engaged in high level classes until the pandemic, and then he realized just how much the game was, and it was like he saw the behind the curtain and he couldn't put it back, and he just had the worst time. Like, he still made it through high school just fine. He did what he needed to do and he made it, but he had the hardest time after he realized it really was just a token economy of like, I'm just gonna get by to get by. And had a harder time finding the purpose and meaning it for himself.
So with a student like your son, or if you want to picture a different person too, that's fine. Like you mentioned AI as a shortcut. And I think David and I have had these conversations too, and I think we refer to it as like cognitive offloading, that
Right.
it's an easy button. I don't have to really think or engage with it. But then at the same time, like, and it definitely, I think for those people that are looking to do that, the academic integrity piece becomes, I think, a huge issue. But you also talk about a little bit here about AI being a tutor. And can you kind of give us some ideas or maybe of something effective that a teacher could do to help maybe distinguish between those two different ideas to help a student, such as maybe your son or another one that you're imagining or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack with that, because I think exactly like you said, I think it is the students who are it's a certain student who's going to take that off-road of things, and also that we don't usually start in a place of assuming that you have morals and values that guide you not to cheat. Like, we assume that you've started this place that like you're just out for an easy win, but I don't think that's who most students are. I even my own son, so like take my example as my son. Yeah, I don't think he was out for just an easy win. He wanted to be engaged with it, he just wasn't. And so I think the way I describe it too is like, I use AI as a thought partner, and it fills a void for my crazy ideas that come to me at 2:00 in the morning, and I don't have somebody else to talk them out with. And it fills a void for like, I have this idea and I think that it might work. So I can go back and forth and have this thought partner that's pushing me and my thoughts in another direction. And using it more, you learn how to push back also on the like very positive outcome that keeps stroking your ego to think that you like everything you say.
So when you wake up at 2:00 in the morning, and you have this thing, and the cat doesn't engage with you because the cat recognizes you're awake at that point, right? And
Right.
not a good feedback partner, is it?
No. And so it's like, it's that all the time tool that you can have. And I think for students to be able to engage in some of these AI as a tutor kind of models, it's instead of being a cognitive offload, it's actually like deepening your thinking. Like that's been my experience using it as a thought partner, is it deepens my thinking and pushes me to look at it from a different lens or angle. And that's the potential that we have when we can get students into those things. So there are a handful of products that are available free, even free for to use, right? Like Conmingo and School AI and those kinds of things, where you can give some of those pieces to students and still be engaging backside with how they're interacting and engaging with it. So you're sure that they're not just seeking answers for it. And many of those are programmed not to give answers too. And along that line, some of the work that we're starting to move towards in our district is taking our whole AI guidance committee and breaking it up now, because we've had a K-12 group, and breaking it up into subcommittees by grade band. So we're going to have a secondary group and a middle school group and an elementary group. And then thinking about what this AI tutor might look like at those different levels, because it serves a different purpose and place in each of those sections. And I think something that's been interesting in connecting through Mangai is I get the perspective of then what higher ed is thinking and what the workforce is thinking, and how we can, I think, well, we get this in elementary a lot, that we want to be careful that we're not always just preparing you for what comes next. Like sometimes we just want to be in the moment and really engaging deeply in where we are and what it means to be right here, right now. And we also want to have an eye on what does come next. So when we've looked at that, then higher ed is looking for, well, how do we engage? How are you engaging with AI so that you can do it in depth in your field, so you can become prepared and proficient to enter your field of work when you come out? Well, then it's like, can we use an AI tutor model or something that gives you a more tailored response, or do we need to give you a full access to AI model to do that? And then you look at high school and you say, well, if college or higher education is going to be looking at these models where like maybe we're going to give you more of a full access, or at least in times and places, how are we using that? So it's like a little bit of a backwards design kind of thing. Like how do we get the right level of AI use and AI tutoring pieces into place in those levels so that you can move to that next stage and grow from where you are? And I think that's what the potential of the AI tutor models have in place, or the AI as a thought partner have in place, because it's not just about shortcutting you, it's about getting additional thoughts, ideas, and pushing your perspective and insight into deeper levels.
And those are some really good examples of the actual like everyday use of when students are engaging with this. And if you were to step back and talk a little bit about the how you get to that point where you are having students, well, teachers and students using these platforms effectively, it all really starts and stems from guiding principles and what the district is going to establish and what those are going to look like. And one of the things that you suggest is inviting teachers to be part of that process, for one, but then also there's the idea of during that drafting, developing principles rather than like the don't do this and don't do that, and having more of a, instead of a top-down approach, a more collaborative approach that you're starting to establish guiding principles that everything else is going to flow from. Can you talk a little bit about why you find that to be important, rather than the rigid rules approach, which I already agree with you on that, but I just wanted to get your perspective as to why that approach is more effective and important.
I think when we look at policy and rigid rule kind of things, that we're going to always, for specific to AI, we're always going to be chasing the tool. Like it's going to evolve and change, and we're going to outdate our policy as soon as we print it. And I think when we look at policies and rigid rules on things, we automatically are going to get those who are like, well, how do I break that? Like they're going to want to flip it right away just because you said that, right? Like you said this is like, don't do this. And there are going to be people automatically then are like, okay, then how do I get past this? And how do I bypass this? I mean, just for the intrigue of it sometimes, right? So I think that's a big piece of it, and I think it's principles that anchor us in our purpose. And anchored in our purpose means we can be centered on what it means to be human and how we're using AI to bring out our most human elements, right? Like I have really found through my teaching career that I anchored in the 4 C's, or sometimes Michael Fullan goes for the 6 C's and includes character and citizenship in those. And then, it's like more of a personal development piece. But if those are some of our guiding principles, then no matter how AI changes and evolves, that tool evolves, I can still be grounded with students in a conversation about why it's best for your character, or why it's best for a communication, and why we want to keep humans at the center of our work, and that piece of it. So I think it really helps us rephrase it from being that it's like a stagnant, we're done with this, and we don't need to rigid rules or policies kind of make it feel like, well, this is done and now this is the end, and it's not. And I think we're still in this space where we're still really truly just starting to understand how this is going to impact education and the educational system, and should, like, I think we look at it and we can say, like, so what about our educational system right now is so great and that it's serving all populations so well that we shouldn't be making changes to it. And I think that's where, if we look at principles over policy, that those are the guiding actions that we need to move with as we're evolving and growing in this way.
And do you think like looking at the stoplight model that you had mentioned earlier, did you feel like because of the red being like no use and the green full go, did you feel like there's just so much nuance with AI and in the individual contexts, like it just doesn't work as well as maybe it was initially thought?
Yeah, I think that when you look at it in a stoplight and it's just a yes, no, and kind of like a cautionary, you're negating the real idea of like AI as a thought leader or thought partner or as a tutor, because where exactly does that fit in? If you're going to be at no AI at all, then you're limiting that idea of what it's like saying your parent or your tutor can't help you with the assignment either then. And I think it too quickly limits that. When I look at a spectrum of how I might use AI in an assignment or assessment or in education, there are ways that I could evolve my thinking and elevate the work to bring more of my process and more of this like learner agency into it. If I understand, it's less like the stoplight just feels more like good, bad, right, wrong, as opposed to differentiating elements of the greater depth or ability that it gave you to deepen your learning and understanding because you utilize this like deep thinking partner.
And a lot of that
And
comes down to like the learning goal, right? I mean, you can have a learning goal where I need to know that this is actually your work, your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts that go into it. So I'm just going to say, well, we're putting the brakes, no AI, whether you want to call that red or not. And I agree with you
Right.
100%. I think when I see red, I think, oh, bad,
Yeah.
and green means, hey, I'm all
Good to
in. But
go. Yeah.
yeah, yep, and so I like that concept of there's a spectrum within there that depending upon the learning goal, that academic integrity point still can kind of come out, right?
Right. And then that's the Julian AI part, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
can use AI
Yeah,
and have academic integrity. Like
right.
there's a place for I feel like there's a place for these to exist, but probably not in the more or less rigid system that we currently are part of. Like we have to be willing as educators to learn and like know better, do better. And we have to be modeling and being transparent with our students so they can be matching up to that challenge too.
if you were to think about like, obviously that's, there's several different pieces that go into the guiding principles. We know that even like MDE had put out their guiding principles around AI. They had the 5 principles. And if you were to kind of go back in time a little bit and think about when your group started that work, what would be the insights that you would like to communicate to districts who haven't started that process yet? Because I know, like with some schools in our region, we're starting to work with them on developing guidelines for their district. But a lot of that, it requires conversations that need to happen, and certain pieces need to be included in that. So just based on your experience of that process and thinking, like, if you had to go back all of a sudden and start that process over again, where would you start the conversation once you had an established team?
I think that's a really great question. I think I I think the approach our AI guidance team took, because the putting together the principle part more or less came very easily to us. Like, it was easy for us to get on the same page. And I think part of that is also that our district had just reorganized and restructured our strategic plan. So I think, like, we had already across the district done some work and some thinking around what does it mean to succeed in District 186, and what are our goals and values. And so it was easy for us then to look at the guidance from Minnesota and the principles that MDE put out, and look at different states and different schools and the things they had put out, and then look at our own strategic plan and make those things align, so that it felt like it was authentically us, and it was grounded in our own thoughts and beliefs, but it was also based in these like enduring concepts, like centering on people and ethics and safety and those other like big pieces that of course are a part of our strategic plan also, but just the way that we could integrate those together. It for us, it was a lot of like, let's look at a lot of different models and see different things. And I think in this session that I've offered, that's part of what I try to put out there too. Like, I've just like, here's what we have in 196, like, take a look. What do you think? Is this like match, or like, what would you edit or change about this? Because I think the more we can collaborate together and really take this like human approach to how we explore these principles, and how we're really grounded in like foundationally, like, what is our purpose for school and why are we here together? I think like when we can ground our principles in that piece of it, it's easy to build then this like authentic piece that is actionable, that's actually going to come into work.
Yeah, I really like that, and it kind of leads into, I recall from your session near the end of it, and you had some reflecting questions at the end, or some guiding questions, and I really, this one stuck with me. It was, how can we make student thinking visible throughout their learning journey? If one of our guiding principles is to try to create these lifelong learners, or to
Mhm.
instill that desire, that spark, that curiosity, and not beat it out of them, right? I thought was really kind of poignant, and so to bring that back around, what are some things that you think teachers can start doing tomorrow that I think can help students on that learning journey, and being transparent about what that process looks like, and the use of AI within there, as that tutor, if we want to go back to that you were talking about.
um I think I think it starts with centering on the students. Like, I think it's asking them and it's talking to them and gaining that. And I can think I can say that more easily from an elementary, where I maybe have like a range 20 to 30 kids per year and I see them all day long. It's easier to, make time to engage with each one of them. But I think it's portfolios, and it's profiles of a graduate, and it's these other components where I'm looking deeper into what your skill set is and helping you have those metacognitive skills of tracking and reflecting on your own processes along the way, and the depth of what you're going to learn and gain from that about yourself and about the content is just so rich, and there's so much research that supports that work, that I think the more we can move towards that. And I was even thinking about this, so I but just like, it feels like a totally different lens of things, but it was connecting for me that I was in a second grade classroom yesterday helping them with accessing and analyzing information project, doing some like a first research project. And actually, that was kind of interesting because for second graders, this is like the first time they're doing a research project, and they're going to do so many more research projects, at least the way education stands now, right? Like, this is your next 7-10 years of school. And here's the first time we're doing it. And we're studying dinosaurs. And so we really started with talking about like where we're going to get quality information from. And we have this fact file and it's organized for them. And they're collecting their facts and they were interested in this part. They thought this was like great. They got to pick their dinosaur. They got to read about their dinosaur. They're tracking their facts and it's organized so they understand which content they're going to. And then we're building up our research skills and how we're going to take our research and turn it into sentences and formulate it into like maybe even some paragraphs so we can publish it. So we're using Book Creator to publish these digital books, right? So now we're at this process where we're turning our thoughts into sentences for each of the topics. And we even have it set like a question answer format, just so it's really clear which facts are going to go with which one. And when I was in those class yesterday, it's the second week that we were working. I go for 30 minutes once a week. And it was the second week we were working on this writing sentences part. And I had the student like, first she just kept kind of like calling out like, I don't get it. And she'd done it the week before, right? I don't get it. And so I was checking in with her, redirecting her. There were a couple other teachers and adults in the room kind of doing the same thing. And then she just kind of like repeatedly kept crying out. So I came and sat down next to her. And it's taking the opportunities to engage and know our students. So I sat down right with her and I went through it with her and I was like, what is like stopping you from understanding this right now? And what is bringing you to the point that there are now tears? Like, tell me more about what you're thinking and feeling right now. And so the first part of it was we were talking about the dinosaur diet of her dinosaurs. She had a brachiosaurus and it ate ferns. And she had written down ferns without being sure what ferns were. So we were like, well, let's go look up what ferns are, right? And this is a skill also. As you're researching things, you're going to come into all kinds of jargon and technical language as you do research, and you might not be sure about your content, so you might have to do some research about your research. So we looked up what ferns were, and she was feeling a little bit better. And then she still just was like not wanting to write the sentences, and I just kept taking the time with her to say like, we can stop this now. If you're not going to be able to give your best to this right now, let's stop. We'll find you something else you can do where you can give your best to this right now. But if you can give your best to this now, and you can take all this work you already did and put it into some sentences, you'll be ready to go to that next step where she really wanted to get into Book Creator. And just partnering with her in that and being able to offer her some encouragement and offer her some support and walking with her in it, that's what our students need. They need us to be the adults in their space that walk them through this learning journey and support them along the way. So we ask them questions, engage in relationships with them, help them track and document their thinking processes along the way, and encourage metacognition.
So transition here a little bit. I think these are all great things, and I love that focus of the human-centered approach or the student-centered approach as you talked about here. But let's zoom out a little bit from the classroom where we were just focusing on here to being part of Mingaya, you kind of get your finger on the pulse of what conversations are taking place around the state, that relate to AI in education, from a business perspective or from a college or high school or elementary perspective here. What do you think are some of those conversations that are taking place today, or what do you find energizing about those?
I find so much energizing about going to the Mangaya meetings and engaging with all these collaborative partners. I think there's a real sense of, I think like a year ago when we were asking this question, it was a lot of like, we still just have a lot of people resistant and they haven't really tried. And so we're just kind of avoiding the whole thing as much as we can. Right. And I think a year later, we're at this place that more people, maybe from a personal standpoint and maybe from a professional standpoint, have dabbled. And maybe it wasn't even intentional, right? Maybe you just did a Google search and AI just comes up as your first option now, and it wasn't even an intentional use of AI. But I think there's more sense of how this is truly impacting the way that we are accessing and analyzing information just as adults and humans in the world. And then there's this real sense of, oh, okay, so how do we, so I think policy and practice and principles are a big part of what the need and concern is. It's like, how do I address this? And I think it feels like there's also this real need for evaluating assignments and assessments, and what are we doing, and how. I think it goes to like the 4 to 4 questions of a PLC, like what do we want the students to learn, how do we know they've learned it, what do we do if they do, and what our actions going to be if they don't know. And I think we're taking a different look and lens at that piece of it to say, well, how can we enhance what well, first, does this assignment, does this assessment actually assess our learning goals? And how can we enhance that connection to ensure it really does? And it's kind of like building to this more authentic assignment and assessment piece of it that looks like maybe it'll go in a direction that's more focused on the processes that you're taking along the way than just at a product lens. And I think statewide, there's also a lot of conversations that continue and need to continue about safety and ethics and precautions. So it's easy to have a whole lot of student data, um, and be able to enter that into an AI, but is that the correct thing to do? And how much or how little data and actual student information is appropriate to be putting in, and how do you redact personal identifier information from that data and still make it something that's actionable to you on the other side. And so I think there's a lot of conversation about that piece also going forth. And I like personally was like in elementary in our district, one of the things we're seeing, because we're just at sharing the guidance with elementary schools and teachers, is we see a lot of turn towards like, well, if this tool can make me something that's kind of like cute and it seems like it's good quality, that's what I'm going to use. And so I've a little bit, I'm cautious and I'm leery of things that products that sell themselves on time saving and that kind of piece, because it goes to the cognitive offload thing again. Like, are we offering the best, or are we offering a resource that's maybe based in bias and just replicating systems and structures and pieces that haven't been that effective for us to this point? So I think there's a whole there's a whole lot happening out there, but I'm really energized by staying in this conversation where we keep grounding it back to being human centered and student centered, and that's a big focus that Mangaya has, because I think when you ground it back to that piece and to the principles, it's easier not to get lost in it.
Yeah, and I got to say, Amanda, I've really appreciated the work that you have done, in particular as part of that group, and having listened to you speak now a couple of different times. And so thank you, and I hope you continue to stay involved in that, because I think it's voices like yours that we need to be able to amplify. So it's one of the reasons why I was super excited to get you on our podcast here. But we're going to kind of shift to kind of one of the things that David and I have started to do at the end of our podcast now, is our lightning round questions. So we will kind of ask you a few questions here. You could take them whatever direction you would like to. If it's a one-word answer, that's fine. If you think it's something you would like to elaborate on because it's something that's important to you, then feel free to do so. But we'll just kind of take turns asking them, and David's going to kick us off here with the first one.
All right. So, Amanda, if you could instantly have like an AI assistant right now, so like a GPT or a GEM or something like that, one that you haven't created yet, but you need, what would you name it, and what would it do?
So this question like kind of calls back to the whole thing too. So I both want to encourage both of you to stay on this too, because I've also gained a ton from you and all of the great work that you have going on in your organizations and the things you're doing for Minnesota as well. So I think we all have to stay in this space because this is the work, right? And so that brings me to that, because about like a year ago, Jeremy and I and Diana Fenton were all, and who was one of my instructors when I did my master's program. So it was like this awesome culmination. We were in a group on centering on people, and we ended up working on an idea of like, well, how do we vet AI tools to know if we should be purchasing these things or not? And then we looked at Eric Kurt's rubrics, we looked at the Triple E framework, we looked at all these pieces, and we were evaluating them. And then it was this guy right here, Jeremy, who was like, wait, we could put together a GPT and we could have AI evaluate the AI. And we were like, what? And it was like my first foray into like, this is a thing. We could just make a tool that does the tool. And so right back at you, Jeremy, because you like inspired me in that way.
I still use that one. I still
Me
have
too.
it. Yeah.
Me too. And I've built others like it now. So we get this we get a lot of like elementary wants this like literacy app kind of thing, and we're like, well, does this align with our science of reading practices and structured literacy? I'm like, I don't know. So I built a tool that was like all of the resources we have about it, and I'm like, evaluate this tool and how well does it align, right? It's very much built off the same idea that you got started in that group. So, and
Well,
if I were building, yeah, thank you. If I were to build my own GPT or agent or co-pilot, I think I would go for a pedagogy partner. So it's this way that I've also been framing. I have 7 elementary schools and I get to them all in the week. So I do 2 a day on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then 1 a day the rest of the week. And I have like office hours. And office hours are sometimes really engaging, and sometimes it's me sitting in the library kind of like ready and available and maybe answering emails from one of the other 6 buildings that I'm at. So, but I've been thinking about like, how can I flip and reframe this piece of the day so it is more engaging? And I thought like, well, I could flip it around. Like I could be your pedagogy partner, and I could be someone to like offer that when I'm there for these office hours and it's your before school prep time or your after school prep time, that this tool could, that you and I can partner with AI and this thought partner kind of thing, and look through like what's a challenge or a barrier in your classroom. Let's work through it together. And so I thought, well, like I make a GPT of this too. So it'd be pedagogy partners to kind of like enhance the scale of I can't be in all 7 buildings all the time. And I don't want it to replace me, just
You don't want to
to
clone.
enhance, right? Nope,
Yeah.
no clone. But just as an opportunity to like scale that effort so that it could happen even if I'm not available for you at that moment.
All right, we're going to kind of flip that here a little bit with the next one, okay? Because we've been very tech heavy and tech focused, and that one definitely was. But what's one non-tech or analog thing that you still just can't give up?
My notebook. I am a paper pencil. You guys had sketch notes on. Like I felt like, you know what, that is what I do. I need a blank piece of paper, and when I'm like 2:00 in the morning, I need my thought partner. It's also a blank piece of paper where like I'm like creating all this like weird, it makes sense in my mind information that I like later will try to share with somebody, and they can't make sense of it, and that's fine. It's my notebook though. And so that I take in my notebook that I'm like organizing my crazy thoughts into some organized action steps. Notebook, pencil, that's what I need.
All right. Okay, so the next one is you get to replace one school staff position with an AI-powered robot. This is just a hypothetical question. We don't have to take it too serious here, but which role would it be and why?
And I'm glad it's hypothetical, because I would hate to, the idea of robots replacing humans is like, you know, that's one of the scary elements. Like I don't think it's something any of us are like looking forward to, unless it's because now that human is more engaged with other humans or able to do some other task, and we've like offloaded something that like deserved to be offloaded. So in a school or in our schools, I would offload it tends to be the same person in our buildings, like the instructional clerk who's making copies and doing lunch duty. And so that this person could then be like engaged with a small group of students, or like having conversations with kids at lunch, rather than, you know, telling them the what fors and making sure they sort their trash responsibly. So I would offload that copy clerk lunch duty person.
Yeah, and I like how
remember
you I like how you said it too. It's like the idea here is not to replace somebody, but to enhance the environment for everybody that's at the district.
Right.
What's one thing that about you that your students or your colleagues would be surprised to learn?
I don't talk to robots. Like, I don't. I'm really engaged in this, and I'm like, oh, and it's like I'm a leader in the state, or like all that, like I'm an FCO with this group and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, first of all, I'm like, I don't know, I just kept saying yes to things, and there I am. But second, then people are like, I don't talk to my phone, and I don't talk to I don't even know their names all the time because I don't talk to them. Yeah, I don't talk to the robots. Now, if you count that I'm typing to them, that I do type to the robots, but I don't like verbally talk to robots. Yeah, I don't know. I will talk to my refrigerator when it beeps at me and reminds me that I've kept the door open too long. I'm like, I got it. I'm just getting the milk in, right? But I don't talk to the robots.
That makes two of us, because I can't bring myself to use the voice thing very much. I just continue to
Yes,
default to typing. I don't know why, but
I know.
I've crossed that a little. I've crossed that threshold. I do know.
It's good. I'm sure there'll be some point where it's like it just doesn't make sense not to anymore. Even like I don't know, just going through with different things that like people have been like, oh, you're using this gem. It's so much easier if you just record yourself. And I'm like, I mean, that's brilliant, but then I'd be talking. I'd have to record. I'll just type it.
all right. This is, let's see. What the next question is, when it comes to AI in education, what's your current hot take? And honestly, too, it doesn't have to necessarily be AI in education. It could just be in general. But what's your current hot take? Something that you believe that not everyone agrees with yet?
I think I think I already kind of hit upon it. I think it's products and processes. I think I even a year ago, less than a year ago, months ago, was really into like this product and that product and this product and what they can do. But since Gemini is so easily like into our Google workflow, and in our district we also have Microsoft and Copilot available to us, and because they're just so accessible, and then I can go in and make a gem, and the gem can do whatever I do. I mean, basically anything, right? I I have become more leery of the products out selling themselves. And it's not like I think most of the companies are out there like in the right space and right intents and that kind of piece. But like if we don't have to purchase something and we can make it ourselves, and then we have this ownership and buy-in that that's something that we've made and done, and we're modeling then that piece that like we want students, it's like the learning integrity and it's this process we're taking along the way, then that I'm all in. Like, let's be a part of the process before we're buying products. Then maybe we'll find the right product that will fit us. So products and processes.
And I get the last lightning question here. What's your walk-up song, or what's a song that like when you instantly gets you motivated, or you go to when you need that pick me up?
I don't know. I had a harder time with this question than I should. I just like listen to the rate. I'm opportunistic, like whatever's on, and I don't know that. So I had a harder time with that than I thought I would. I think I think I flipped it. I asked my husband this, and I was like, "What would be my walk-up song?" And he was like, "Well, flip it," because then even he had a hard time with thinking about what it would be. So then he was like, flipped it. He was like, "Well, what else would motivate you?" And he was like, "You have like a quote or something you go to?" So then I went to, okay, I do, when I was in the Learning Design and Technology program. Nancy Van Erp was the program lead of that, and she was her handle and things was, if not us, who, and if not now, when. And I think that one really motivates me. It's just so action oriented, and it applies to AI, but it applies to anything. So I think I get really motivated by like quotes and like being inspired by other people in collaboration with them. So if not us, if not now, when, and if not us, who.
And the good news is that you could legitimately make your own AI song with that quote playing. So
Good. I should do that now.
So Amanda, thank you so much once again for coming on and sharing your great insights with us here. do you have anything coming up that you would like to promote or share or anything like that? Or, how can people reach out to you if they would like more information or to follow up or just to kind of connect?
Mm. That's really a great question. I'm like just entering the space that I feel like I've been in the space where like I'm trying to talk and there's maybe not always an audience, and like I'm now in the space that like I'm saying things and like people are interested, and I'm like I'm not even really sure what to do with this. So I don't know that I have like a great way to
Well, we
reach
could
out.
we could definitely add your email or your
Perfect.
LinkedIn if that works for
I
you.
I am on LinkedIn, so I could do that. I can't even think of what so yes, let's add that after because I can't even think of what it is right now.
Perfect. And I
Um,
think I'll link your presentation
Perfect.
or the Google site that you had shared along with that into there as well, so people can dive into
Yeah, it's
doing
purposely
AI a
designed.
little bit more.
Yeah, it's purposely designed as a website so people can like take it, like use it. It just felt like more actionable. But coming up, Mangaya's got some exciting things, and I've been really working for helping to like build out our website and promote different things. So St. Cloud's got a AI conference kind of coming up on December 5th. And then I have a presentation that was accepted at MESPA, the Minnesota Elementary School Principals Association, in February. So I'm really excited about those things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. It was really great. I thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Amanda.